Hello, James.
Hello, can you hear me well?
I can hear you. Yes.
Great, great, great. And just to get the ball rolling, my name is James. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Adam Chase. I work at a company called Wendover Productions. And among other things, my main job is that I am one of the co creators and game designers and competitors in a web series called Jetlag the Game, which is a travel competition series.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, think of the Amazing Race, more, how should I put this? More modern?
Yeah, I don't know that I'd say more modern. I'd say more DIY, certainly
Yeah.
more vlog style, more yeah, and a lot more open-ended. Like we design the games in such a way that you could really, really mess up.
Yeah. So, like, in the Amazing Race, you can't really screw up that badly, but in these games, there are many different elements. Like, I know, as an example, there are in the last season, which was in Japan, they had lots of cards that would screw you over if you picked the wrong one. So that comes into play a lot. But it's a very open-ended version of the Amazing Race. So I'm just gonna hop right in and ask you a question, which is, what do you think the major differences between scripting for major media companies or news or newspapers versus the YouTube scripting process? I'm assuming you script, right?
Yeah, I script for half. I used to script for a long time for Half as Interesting.
Oh,
Um, yeah. But jet lag is obviously different in that it's not scripted, it's edited certainly, but there's no script that you adhere to. You edit together the unscripted footage.
yeah. So from like your HAI experience, what would you say?
I would say that when I compare it to experience that I had in more traditional stuff, that it is, I mean, one thing is it's done faster, I think, just on a tighter timeline in general. Like YouTube is pretty fast moving in a way that, I mean, certainly like television is not. I mean, a newsroom is a different beast where you do have to write things quickly. But yeah, I would say like it's fast moving. It's a lot more informal, certainly than news. Like, I mean, Half as Interesting is an educational channel. So it is informative and we have to get facts correct and do research. But at least the way that that channel is written is much more informal. Wendover is different. Wendover is obviously is more formal.
Much
And I
more
would
thought
say a
out.
lot of like how it's written is just with an aim towards like what works on YouTube, like retention, things that are clickable, things that are like going to work well within the YouTube packaging. Like I think that any medium ends up having, like its own incentives develop, right? And YouTube has a very particular set of incentives, which are that you're trying to maximize the number of people that click on something and then the number of people that watch it all the way through. And so the content is written towards that end. Whereas in other mediums, that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you're already watching the news, you're most likely not to change the channel after a certain topic comes on that you don't want to be watching. You're just going to keep it on. But if you don't instantly like capture a viewer's attention, they don't have anything like they don't have to pick up a remote, they don't have to do any of that. They can just click off your video. So there's much more of an incentive to be more, it's like a faster pacing, but as well as like, you got to have an interesting topic.
Yeah. And I think also, I mean, if you compare it to like television news, it's very different in that, like, if the news is on at 8 p.m., you just know it's the news and you will turn it on. You'll decide to turn it on or not based on your overall, like or dislike of that broadcast. Whereas with this, it's like we are telling you more about what it's going to be. We're like, this is what we're going to talk about in this episode. So, like, you have to make the determination if you're going to click on that or not. Whereas, especially for like local news, for example, it's just like the news at 7 p.m., you know.
Yeah,
And obviously
exactly.
there are stingers. There are things where it's like, tonight at 7, like, whatever the story is, but it's that to a much higher, more extreme level.
Yeah, of course. And I apologize in advance because I'm in a public library doing this. So there are other people off in the distance. You might hear them murmuring. But
All good.
yeah. All right. So my next question is what kind of work do you do for HAI Jetlag the game? Like now?
So I don't work on Half as Interesting anymore, but I
Yeah.
wrote Half as Interesting scripts for about 3 years. And so when I did that, I looked for topics and then pitched those topics in topic pitch meetings with Sam, who runs the company and started that channel. And then when Ben, my colleague, Ben Doyle, wrote there, he still does write some. We would essentially decide on the topics together. I would go off, I would do a lot of research, I would write a script, and then I would send it to Sam. He would do final notes. And then I would give guidance to our post production team to turn into a video. So they would make motion graphics. I would request motion graphics and stuff, and they would, add in various pieces of stock footage and motion graphics to sort of make it into a video. But I don't work on that property anymore. I'm full time on a property called Jetlag, which I mean, my work is pretty extensive on that. So I would say the closest, like,
Mm.
well, it's complicated. I would say the closest analog to what my job is in like the traditional media world would be a showrunner. So I and Ben and Sam develop these game formats that we play, and we develop a new format pretty much every season. So that involves a lot of work in terms of deciding, a concept that will be compelling to people and clickable, something that feels like it's within sort of the voice and tone of the show, and then developing a game that will be functional and lead to interesting moments and drama and interesting strategy and going to interesting places and doing interesting things and all of that. And so there's a lot of design work that goes into that. Not too dissimilar from like, if you were to design a board game or you were to design, a game to play, with your friends, like a sport that you invent or something. The difference is that like there are a lot of interesting obstacles that we run into, and that most of our work is done in terms of gamifying public transit systems and various transit systems. So we have to work within the existing structures of transit and design games that function well within those structures. So like as opposed to a board game where you get to design the board, it's like we're given the boards and we have to design a game to play on those boards, if that makes sense.
I think that's yeah.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I think that's a great analogy. Like you aren't the ones crafting the billboard. You are the ones coming up with the rules for the billboard. I'm actually gonna go check right now. I believe yeah, so your YouTube description is we play games where the world is our board. So what you said
Yes.
perfectly fits that.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's part of my job. And then the other part of my job is like I am on camera, so I compete in the games and we film ourselves. And so that's, its own specific part of the job is being an on-camera personality, filming yourself, competing, which is an interesting skill set that I think I've developed over time, like getting better at navigating transportation systems.
Yeah, I'm sure that comes in use a lot, especially I think you live in New York, right?
I do, yeah.
Ironically, speaking of meeting up, we've actually met before.
Oh, were you at a premiere?
Yes.
Okay, very cool. Yeah,
I'm
one of the New
trying to
York
pull up the
ones.
photo. I think hold on. Oh, here I am. All right. I'm not sure if you're oh shoot.
Will it go up? Oh yeah, there we are. Oh yeah, with Toby in New Zealand.
Yeah,
Fun.
that was a lot of fun. So yeah, here I'll leave my camera on. Why not? All right. So I'm gonna move on to
Oh, but
other.
anyway, but sorry, I have to finish answering your question.
Oh yeah, of course.
The arguably the biggest part of my job is editing. So Ben and I do what are called the rough cuts of the show. So we like take all the footage and we cut it how we want it into the episode, and we fill out a giant long document called the run of show. It's a list of every motion graphic element that we want. And then we hand it off to some additional editors and motion graphic artists who make those motion graphics, and the editors implement them. And then the editors also do the music. which is a really big part of the show. There's audio editing that gets done and sometimes custom music. So it was a great team that works on that. But a huge part of my job is that edit that Ben and I do. And then I sort of oversee the post-production process alongside Ben. But like I get drafts from motion graphics teams, the other edit teams, like the audio edit teams, etc. And sort of I operationally am working with them the most of anyone because I'm full-time on the property.
Yeah, so it's not like a part-time endeavor for you. So it's like, your job. So of
Yeah.
course you're encouraged to do your best with all that stuff. So I'm gonna
Mhm.
move on. Yeah, let's skip that one. But I think by far the most asked question, I on Twitter I tweeted out, I'm okay, I'm interviewing Adam Chase. I need some ideas. And so uh s- two people commented the exact same thing, and it was, why did he take off the wig?
Yeah. I so I don't know what format the interview will be and if it's just a straight Q&A, but for context, there was a season where I was in a disguise because I was trying not to get caught and I had a wig and I took off the wig and then I got caught.
Don't take that out of context.
Yeah. So, I mean, why I took the wig off is there's a few reasons. One is the simple reason of it was very hot in France that day, and that wig was really hot, and I had gotten very hot, and I wanted to take it off for a period. The other reason is, and I think that this is often easy for the audience to sort of forget, is that within that game, the role of the runner, it's a game of tag, and the runner does not know where the chasers are. So I had been hiding from the chasers for hours. I mean, a long time at that point. The day earlier, I think I had gotten into Paris at 5 p.m. or so. Like I think I had 3 or 4 hours in Paris. And then I had another like 2 hours that morning. So I had been on high alert hiding for about 7 hours. So at a certain point, your guard just kind of gets let down because you don't know where they're going to be or when they're going to be there. So I think everyone was frustrated because it was like I took off the wig right before I got to where the chasers were, but I didn't know that that was where they were going to be. To me, they could have been any of the places I had been over the last 7 hours. And the other answer to that, which is a more nuanced answer, and it kind of gets in the weeds, but at that point in the game, I had pulled a curse card that meant I could not use my phone. So the day before, I had looked into how to get to this train station I wanted to get to, and I had found that the fastest way to get there was this sort of local train line, and that if you were to drive, it would take much longer. So I was under the belief that if I got on the local train line to that train station, there was no way that they could beat me there because there's no way they could predict I was going there. If they tried to take a car there, it would take them too long and I would beat them there. Now, it turns out that when I had been looking at that information the day before, it was during rush hour when the traffic was really high. So in the morning, the cars got there a lot faster, but I didn't know that because I couldn't check the traffic because I couldn't use my phone, if that makes sense. So I was under the impression that I was home free once I got to that station, but it turns out I was not.
Yeah. So I'm guessing a ton of people, most of the kids in my school have zero clue. No offense who you are or what jet lag or window of production is. Let's see. Okay, this was another question. How did you and Ben meet?
Ben and I met, and Ben, again, for context for people, is my teammate on the game and also my colleague. We met when we were both in college. We went to different colleges. I went to Yale and he went to Brown, and Yale's in Connecticut and Brown is in Rhode Island. So they're not too far away from each other. And we both wrote for our college's humor magazines. We were both comedy writers. And we both had been connected with this humor magazine, this national humor magazine called the American Bystander, which is sort of a small independent humor magazine, but it's like the last national American humor magazine. And we both wrote for it. And there was a meetup of writers for it in New York, which we both went to. And we were like the only people there under the age of like 60. So we connected that way. And then we started collaborating on some humor writing. And that was kind of how we became friends. But that was how we met, was at that meetup.
Yeah, that situation was very relatable. I don't think anybody really knows how Ben met. I don't know if you've told anybody, but I think that's interesting to know. Let's see. Okay, what are your thoughts on the new cable-like features that YouTube has been sprinkling? So I've personally been getting bombarded with the advertisements for the YouTube
YouTube TV?
Sunday, that, but also the YouTube Sunday ticket or whatever for the football season.
Oh, sure.
And I don't
Yeah.
even like really watch football, so I'm like, why
Hmm.
me? But then there's also like YouTube Premium, I think it's now called. But it
YouTube
seems like it's trying to
Premium,
become
which is an
more and more
ad-free
like a
version of the service. Yeah.
yeah, trying more become like a cable version where like you pay to not get ads, yeah,
Hmm.
or you kind of like, and then that gets split among creators. I'm not really sure what I think about that, so I thought I'd ask you.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a few different parts of that question. So, YouTube Premium, I think, is an interesting product. I subscribe to YouTube Premium in part because I just watch a lot of YouTube, and also in part because I watch YouTube sort of for my job. So it makes sense for me. It's a worthwhile investment for me just to not have to deal with ads. Um, Creators also get paid significantly more from a view by a YouTube Premium subscriber than a regular viewer who watches the ads. But I will say the vast majority of what's called YouTube AdSense money, which is the money that YouTube pays creators directly as a portion of the ad revenue that YouTube gets off videos, the vast majority of that does not come from YouTube Premium subscribers. So like it's clear to me, at least right now, that the vast majority of people watching YouTube are not subscribed to YouTube Premium. And I think that I would be surprised if the number of YouTube Premium subscribers were to like, I think it's a somewhat niche product. People who really want those extra features. Like part of why I have it is it gives you a feature where you can download YouTube videos for watching later, which I really like being able to do for flights. And it also, and I think that maybe regular YouTube does this now, but you can listen to YouTube videos in the background with the app like not active in your phone, which is really useful for me. I don't know if regular YouTube does this now, but it used to not.
Yeah, they still don't. It's
Yeah.
a bit annoying because like I use Spotify. I just turn off my phone
Hmm.
and Spotify keeps playing, but YouTube just shuts down completely.
Yeah.
But so I guess that's just to keep the incentive to buy YouTube Premium alive.
Yeah. But anyway, but to answer your question about like YouTube TV and YouTube Sunday Ticket and all this stuff, I mean, I think that a lot of people are no longer have access to like any sort of regular television service. They don't have access to broadcast TV and they don't subscribe to cable. I mean, I, as an adult, have never had a cable package. The only ways that I can watch live TV are by streaming that live television. And so I think that YouTube TV, at least, like, makes a lot of sense to me as a product, especially for sports. I mean, I think that there's an interesting thing happening where like live television is becoming increasingly less in demand, except in the case of sports, where the whole point is that it's live. So sports are kind of like, I think even as streaming gets more and more powerful, sports will always be something that there's a demand for a live broadcast of. So I think that's a lot of what is keeping people tied to their cable subscriptions or their TV packages. And so I think it makes sense that YouTube is saying, like, okay, for somebody like me, for example, who's a cord cutter, like, I mean, I never even cut a cord. I never had cable, so I didn't even cut a cord, but that's, a term for people who get rid of their cable. Like YouTube TV offers a logical service for me. I don't use YouTube TV, but I use my dad's account sometimes. And the only time I use it is if I want to watch like a sports game, or if I want to watch like maybe a live awards show, even though normally I normally those are on broadcast that have free streaming. Like I can get into like an ABC broadcast sometimes for free using my parents' cable subscription, but that's often difficult. But anyway, broad strokes being like, I think that it makes a lot of sense as a product for YouTube, given that live sports are really the thing that people are holding on to their cable and TV packages for. And if you can give that to them in a more focused and easily accessible way, it makes it easier for them to replace their more expensive cable that offers a lot of things they don't need and one thing they do with something that just offers the thing that they need. Right.
But I think something that isn't like cable, where you get a ton of stuff that you don't need and stuff that you just want, is like I don't want to say hardcore, but like not mediocre, but medium fans that subscribe to Nebula, which who are like, not they so like it's an ad-free platform, that kind of thing for all the people who don't know, where you can like watch a bunch of creators who have gotten on board onto this new streaming platform, which I'm guess like all these larger educational creators came together and they're like, we need a better place for
Mhm.
just to, of course, not to only make more profit to keep the machine that is a YouTube channel going, but
Right.
then continuously support themselves and all that. But it just feels like a substitute for YouTube Premium that you get everything that you want and everything that you need. So like even if you want to get more niche, Nebula is like at the top of that, where cable's at the bottom of a pyramid, and then you got YouTube Premium, and
Mhm.
then Nebula for the people who want something extremely specific, like education creators who
Mhm.
they enjoy.
Yeah, Nebula is interesting. Well, I mean, and I think the word you use, James, is right, which is that it is a relatively niche service. And I think that that is actually part of what has been its success, is that it is appealing to a narrow band of people who are able to develop a relationship to the platform and its mission and goals. And yeah, so I think that people are able to have a relationship to Nebula and its goals and its sort of ambitions and what it does for creators in a way that people don't for like Netflix, for example. Like Nebula is owned by the creators who publish on it. And when you subscribe to it, you're directly helping support those creators. And I think that that's a relationship that is very different than why you subscribe to Netflix, for example. Like, I don't think anybody subscribes to Netflix because they really want to make sure that who's like a famous, like a person in a lot of Netflix movies, like that Ryan Reynolds is able to pay his mortgage. Like, I don't think that's why people do that. Or even like less rich, actors and stuff. Because there's not that direct relation. And that's part of why, and this is interesting, like, intersection here. The WGA and the Actors Guild, SAG-AFTRA, are on strike right now, in part because there is not a direct relationship between viewership or revenue by these streamers and how much money those creatives get paid, right? That's just called residuals, a residual system, and that doesn't exist. And on Nebula, basically it does, which is that your payouts for Nebula are based on how much people watch your stuff on the platform. And that also is how your shadow equity, your ownership portion of Nebula is paid out. But anyway, I think that niche streamers, and there's really two to look at. Nebula and Dropout is really the other one, and they do different things. Dropout is college humor, if you know what that
I do.
brand is. Yeah, so Dropout, it does a similar thing, and Nebula and Dropout have both been quite successful, in part because they are small. There's a loyalty to them as a brand, as like a group of people that you're invested in, and like they make more innovative and creative stuff, I think, often than traditional media is able to do. And they're able to make it cheaper and more effectively than traditional media is often able to do. And I think a lot of that, at least on the YouTube side, is like YouTubers are really good at making a lot of stuff fast on a low budget.
Yeah,
So, that is something that in traditional media is quite rare.
what the WGA strike is, but basically a bunch of writers in Hollywood, basically a pack of them, said we're not going to write for you anymore because unlike YouTube, you don't get an amount of money based on how
Mm-hmm.
well a show does. So
Well,
like
sometimes you
you
do.
have
So it is important to clarify that. So that is the case for broadcast and cable, that writers are paid when an episode re-airs. That's called a residual.
yep,
But there is not a residual system in the US for streaming. And that's a big part of what the strike's about.
exactly. So the way YouTube and Nebula kind of works is, for lack of a better word, a bit communist. So like everybody gets shared equally, but on the amount of work they've done. So I don't know. It's like, let's say there's creator A, creator B. One pulls 80% of the views, one pulls 20. Would
Uh-huh.
the revenue split be 80-20?
Yeah, roughly. Yeah. Well, on Nebula, yes, because it's based on watch time. On YouTube, it's more complicated. I also would say, and I don't mean to correct you, but I would argue it isn't particularly communist. I think in a communist system, everyone would get paid the same amount. Whereas in
Yeah.
this system, it really is actually quite a capitalist system. It's you are compensated for your work based on the amount of revenue that work produces. Like it's actually sort of a purely capitalist system. And part of the problem is that is how capitalism can work, where you are compensated based on the value that you provide a company. Whereas what's happening for a lot of the writers is they aren't even getting that. They are not even being given money commensurate with the value that they give to that company. That's part of why unions are so important, because they're able to band together and demand what they're worth in a capitalist system. Like, unions wouldn't be necessary in a communist system. But anyway, on YouTube, it's more complicated. So I don't need to get super into it, but basically on YouTube, you're paid based on what's called CPM, or cost per mil, which is every channel and every video, you make a different amount of money per every 1,000 views, essentially based on how valuable your audience is to the platform, like YouTube, like what to advertisers, essentially.
Yeah.
So for example,
like,
a channel that just makes stuff about like personal banking and finance is going to make a lot of money per view, because the people that watch that are mostly high income people who want to spend a lot of money investing in stuff.
So to advertise, well, to YouTube, the way CPG Grey put it, who is another educational creator,
yes,
is he said YouTube plays like matchmaker. Creator makes content, that content goes to YouTube, and YouTube sees like it's basically he describes it as an instantaneous auction where like highest bidder gets the advertisement slot.
Yes.
And I think it's probably changed by now, but if you skip an ad, but like instantaneously, you get nothing. I don't believe that's true anymore.
I'm not sure the specifics of how that works, but broadly, yes, James, that's exactly right what you described. And it's also, for what it's worth, it's not just how YouTube works. I mean, that's how a lot of Google works. Like if I would Google something, then like the ads that I get shown that Google AdSense provides on the Google page, and then also on just a random web page, that's also how that works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I think I haven't asked you a question in a while. So let me pull up a new one. And I think that's about it for all the boring questions for my report. Now we can get to the more fun stuff that I've wanted to ask, and
Great.
I'm sure a whole bunch of other people have wanted to ask. So what just in general goes into making a Wendover video? I think you've already answered that. So I think we'll move on.
Well, I also I don't write on the Wendover Productions channel, so
don't?
I can't really speak to it. No, yeah. So I work on Jetlag, and I used to
just Jetlag, right.
But yeah, I've never written on Wendover. That's Sam and my colleague Tristan do the writing on that channel.
Okay.
I mean, I know enough about the process that I could walk you through it, but it's not part of my work.
Yeah. Okay. That's totally great.
Okay. Gotcha.
But I will say, hold on, what's the other one? Okay. So the next question I had was, were you, and if you were, what was your involvement with building up Nebula?
So I can't take a lot of credit for building up Nebula, because I mean that I really wasn't involved in it. And sorry, this is a more boring answer, but I technically am an employee of Wendover Productions, and Sam is the owner of Wendover. He is sort of the one who was involved in the founding of Nebula and sort of deals with Nebula on the creator side.
Yeah.
He also now is the chief content officer of Nebula, but I did not have a ton of involvement in building up. I mean, one thing that I was somewhat responsible for was that Jetlag as a whole pioneered a new model of sort of Nebula monetization and content release, which is the one episode early system, which is that on Jetlag, episodes go out a cycle early. So like we release every week, so episodes go out a week early. So like when episode 1 of Jetlag goes up on YouTube, episode 2 is already up on Nebula. And we found that to be a very successful way of convincing people to sign up for the platform, because Jetlag is a serialized show with often cliffhanger endings. So you really want to watch the next one. So that model, we really kind of pioneered that, Jetlag did, and it was proven successful, and now a number of creators do it. So I would say that like Jetlag and my role in Jetlag, like we helped to create that system, but otherwise I can't take a ton of credit for like the development of Nebula as a platform.
Okay, well, thank you for the answer.
I was a tutor. Oh yeah, no worries. I coached a debate team in Queens for quite a while
Oh,
while I worked with Sam, while I worked for Sam that I was paid for. That was sort of a part-time job for me. And I did some other freelance writing, but yeah, this is my main full-time job, sort
yeah,
of my whole adult life. Angelica,
beautiful
yeah, yeah.
place. I will say that.
Yeah, it's a good theater. So it's a lot of history in the Angelica, which is cool.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right, but let me.
But actually, speaking of the Upper West Side, I don't know if you saw, but I'm repping. Oh no, I'm not repping. I thought I was wearing my Museum of Natural History shirt hat, which I often wear, but I'm not. I'm wearing a similar hat. But I like 50% of the time I'm wearing my American Museum of Natural History hat, which of course the best part of the Upper West Side.
Oh yeah, love it there. Recently went. There's a new exhibit. It's kind of like a beehive.
A
It's like
beehive.
not a beehive. It's like shaped like a massive. It's like a modern art. But I'm sure you can look it up. If you look up natural. Oh, what the? Browse for folder. Sure, do whatever you want.
Yeah, exhibit natural
Oh
history.
shoot.
My favorite newish exhibit at the Museum of Natural History is the Oh, I see what you're talking about. The Richard Gilder Center for Science, designed like a canyon.
Oh neat.
Okay, okay. Whoa, what is this?
Yeah, it's weird, but it was also very neat. They have this whole new section on leaf cutter ants. It's nuts. Like it's so
That's
worth
awesome.
going back. It's like they cut up the leaves and they crawl over like this big rope and they go across the entire room into this big habitat where they've built like all these little
Oh,
shelters
that's
hanging from stuff.
awesome.
It's amazing. So pretty.
I'm a really big fan of the recently ish reopened Hall of Gems and Minerals, which is
The
really great.
gems.
Yeah, yeah. It was open, I think, a few, like maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years ago.
I remember
The
going there.
Mignon Hall of Gems and Minerals. Yeah, it opened in 2021.
I've definitely been in there because when I went to see the new exhibit, we also ended up wandering around the museum. So it's beautiful
Yeah,
in there. All
it
those massive
rocks.
geodes and stuff. So pretty.
I love it there. Anyway, but yeah, Museum of Natural History. Great.
Okay, well, I remember one of them. One of them is how does stress impact, scripting and now working on jet lag.
How does stress impact it? Yeah, I think that YouTube can be a stressful platform. I think that one thing that can sometimes be difficult about it is how much real-time information you get about viewership. Like,
Oh,
when
I
I
totally know what you're talking about on YouTube Studio where like you can
Mhm.
refresh and see all the views.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Oh,
like especially when a new season launches, it can be really nerve-wracking, because I'm just refreshing it every minute, trying to see what. Okay, 1 second.
what?
Sorry. The next season video is up unlisted.
I don't. Oh, really?
Yeah.
So I actually think episode two has episode two gone up on Netflix?
Okay. Okay. I panicked for a second.
What happened?
Um, well, the video went up unlisted, which means people had found it,
Oh,
were
they found
watching
the
it.
link.
Like 67 people had watched it.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, I don't know how. Yeah, yeah. Well, YouTube is yeah, that's I know what you mean. Yeah, it's sorry, I just had a little panic attack looking at that.
Yeah.
Because I was worried that it had been just like posted. That was really
Are
nerve-wracking.
you like on the jet lag YouTube studio?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's fine now. But yeah, I was just saying that, yeah, that like tomorrow, the first episode of season one will go up on YouTube, and that will be like very stressful
Right.
and anxiety inducing. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And then I also think like, there's, I don't know. Yeah, I think that sometimes in general, YouTube has pretty tight timelines. And I think that can lead to stress. I think we've tried our best to, and frankly, Wendover as a company and Sam have done a good job of making sure our work is sustainable. Because I think some YouTubers have a real sort of grinding mindset, which can be very stressful and potentially kind of destructive. I think I was sort of in a fortunate position where I had a strong like landing, I got a strong like land, jumping off point, which was that, it was launched from two successful YouTube channels. So I didn't really experience as much of the true like doldrums as other creators often have.
Yeah.
Which is, I know a lot of
it's all
creators, they
working
start
again.
off, okay, great. A lot of creators start off and it's like, their videos get a few hundred views for years sometimes, and we didn't have that. But I will say, like, when we first launched, I was very worried that the channel wouldn't work and that it wouldn't get viewership. And for the first two seasons, our viewership was quite mild. It was not very significant. And then season 3, it really
Yeah, Tag, you're it. Now that was my next question, but before, I swear, I was just looking at the bookshelf behind me, and I thought this book kind of might have looked like you. I don't know what you think.
I see it. I think the eyebrows. I have really
Yeah,
thick eyebrows.
I don't know. Here, I'm gonna put it back now. But speaking, why do you think Tag You're It season 1 did so well compared to, like, the what was it? Connector Across America and Circumnavigating the Globe, which, they did well, and there's probably some of my
Mhm.
favorites, but Tag You're It
Yeah,
absolutely blew up.
I think it's a combination of things.
Also,
You
will
know,
say, big fan of the pun.
oh, thank you. Yes. Well, I can't take credit for that. That was our thumbnail designer, Simon. He's great. But anyway, yeah, I think it's a number of factors. I think one is that it is a strong title, and I think it had a strong thumbnail. I think that the idea of playing a 72-hour game of tag across Europe, it
It's
it,
so
it has
enticing.
a it has a yeah, it's enticing, and I think it has a clear statement to the extent that like you get at least enough of a sense of what it will be that it compels you. Like, I think, for example, our first season we played Connect Four, but America with actual U.S. states. I think it's kind of unclear what that means. It's like,
Yeah, I
okay,
remember.
so what does that mean? You
Yeah,
like you
I
go to four
remember.
states, or you like what is you actually went to them, or this was like a computer game that you played? Like,
Yeah,
so yeah, go ahead.
oh, well, I was gonna say when I first ran into Wendover, I of course ran into jet lag after watching, like, don't watch this video if you don't want to see my face, and like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
10-year-old me was like, oh, really? So I ended up getting introduced to jet lag, and when it's like we play Connect Four with U.S. states, I was like, what does that mean? And so I
Right,
watched the video, and
exactly.
like, of course, it's a great explanation, but a lot of people would be like, oh, well, I have zero clue what this means. Is that what the whole video is going to be like? So a lot of
Exactly.
people.
Yeah,
I think the
exactly.
main population of the people who ended up watching that video came from the Wendover video, right?
At first, yeah, Wendover and Half is interesting push to it, and that was how we got the first viewership. But
Yeah.
really, after that, it's all the algorithm.
Looking
Um,
at it, it's your fourth most viewed video on the Jetlag channel.
it is now, yeah, but I mean, the viewership curve on that thing looks crazy because that first episode, 100 days in, was at about a 500,000 views, like it had fully plateaued, and then it jumped up to 1 million very quickly when
Oh,
Tag
really?
came out. So that was a big like boost for that video. So now it's up to 1.5 million. But I mean, traditionally, YouTube videos don't operate like that. I mean, on Half is Interesting in general, like the number of views that a video gets in its first day or so, you kind of expect that to double maybe over the first month and then kind of for it to plateau. Like, this is very unusual that this video has continued to grow its viewership in that way.
Yeah.
Um, so like when it first launched and it only got 50,000 views on day one, that was frightening for
I
me
bet.
because I mean, if you compare that to, for example, um, episode 1 of, you know, our New Zealand season, that got 250,000 views day one. So 5 times more views day one,
Yeah.
right? Which is much healthier. But anyway, the question was about why I think Tag did well. And so I think one part of it is it had a thumbnail it had a title that clearly suggested what it was. I think that it was enticing. I think that it sort of as something that we call wish fulfillment sometime, which is like the idea of playing a big epic game of tag is something that I think people have been like, oh, when I was a kid, I played tag with my friends. So I would love to have done a big version of that. Like that's sort of exciting and sort of like a childhood fantasy fulfillment kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I think the other part of it, again, I think it just had a good thumbnail. Like I think it was clear and simple and well made by Simon. And then I think the other biggest thing is I think that it had really effective setting up of its rules and its immediate stakes. And there was immediately like conflict and drama and stakes, and you were interested in that.
It's
Like I
also
think
just so easy to understand. Like we play tag in Europe. There you go.
right, yeah. But I think like at the beginning, when you think about the video and we think about retention, which is really important, like the video starts and within about 30 seconds, within like 15 seconds,
Like
it's like
70
Ben is
seconds.
running away and we're going to try to catch him.
Yeah.
And you immediately have this piece of tension and this dynamic of this guy is trying to get away from these guys and these guys want to go catch him. And it's like that is interesting. And it's a promise to the viewer of like something interesting is going to happen. Either this guy is going to get away or he's going to get caught. But both of those are compelling things. And there's a clear, immediate, interesting dynamic that is going to push you through the early aspects of getting through the rules and the complications and stuff. Because you're like, well, is this guy going to get caught or is he not? Whereas I think it's a little more abstract when it's something like Connect Four and it's like, yeah, I mean, I guess, are they going to get a good first state or a bad first state or what? Like, it's so delayed, the gratification.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that having something early that you can really grab onto is good. Like, The Amazing Race does this pretty effectively. Like, immediately, it's like, who's going to get to the airport first to get the good flight versus the bad flight?
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. That's compelling. That's a compelling, immediate dynamic that you can get into.
Right.
Yeah, and then it'll spread out over time.
Yeah.
Like it'll just be like as time goes on. Like, I mean, you know, Tag episode 1 came out almost exactly a year ago, and it got 2,900 views, like 2,900 views in the last 24 hours, like a
Yeah.
year later. So like it just slowly just tick 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 ticks up. I
So,
think it's going just
and I'm borrowing my brother's laptop because I forgot where I put mine. So thank you, Parker. He wanted me to say that.
got it. I'll
So
tell Parker thank you.
I will. So, and the last question was if you could give one piece of advice to any student, what would it be?
Wow.
No
To a
pressure.
student. Just in general about anything.
About anything. Like that. This isn't like something where I'm like, oh boy, I have an essay to write, and I don't. I'm just asking for general.
I would say that my best advice to a student is find things that you're passionate about and then work hard at those things and invest time into them. I
Yeah.
think that like yeah, I think that's going to be good for you, your development as a person and your development of skills, and also for your ability to like in high school and stuff, like be a compelling college applicant and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But also just going to enrich your life. And another thing I would say is, well, I guess you said only one. So yeah, I think find things you're passionate about and then work hard at those things. I think that making an investment when you're young in things that you're interested in, like when you're young, you have such a capacity to build skills quickly and to learn quickly. Like your brain is just like a sponge, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think it's just really valuable to really try to take advantage of this time that you have when you're in school, when you don't have to work, when you're being taught things, when you are figuring out who you are and who you're going to be. And, you know, I think that one thing that oftentimes can be a difficult part of some adults' lives is that they end up feeling like they don't have a purpose. Like they don't know what it is they want to do, or like they don't have things that they care about or are interested in. I think like one of the great blessings of my life has been that I have always had a lot of things I was passionate about that I felt like gave me purpose, like pursuing those things, trying to, you know, make things I was proud of, right? And so I think that a big part of having a purpose is finding passions and investing in them and working hard at them. And, like
Yeah.
I think for you, for example, like if you're interested in videos and YouTube, I think that making videos is great. I mean, I would also say like it's important to make sure you don't do that at the expense of like your friendships
Oh
and your
yeah.
relationships, which is super important. Ideally, I think
It's
it'd
hard
be
to
great to
balance
make
those.
videos with your friends. Like that's a great thing to do. Is I think that's another piece of advice I would say as part of this is find other people that are passionate about what you're passionate about and work on it together with them. Like make it something that is social for you. Make it something that is something you can do with your friends. Like I think that is really important and positive too, of like not just being like, well, I love this thing, so I'm going to lock myself in a room and do it myself. Like ideally, you would be doing the things you're interested in community with other people like you, because that is how you find community, which is a really important part of just life in general, and also is part of how you get better at things is working with people.
Yeah. So like, personally, I know a lot of people have a lot of different things like sports and stuff, but I do more academic stuff because, look at these very shrimpy. But
Hey, look, I'm very shrimpy too, and I was an all-state cross country runner.
I do run. That's the only thing I do. I
There you go.
think that's about it. So thank you so much for doing this with me. I honestly, when I tweeted that, I was like, huh, this is worth a shot. And I wasn't like planning on continuing the tweets or whatever, but I was like, it's a funny joke. And then I think it was literally 28 seconds later, you were like, sure.
Yeah, no, it just popped up first thing in my feed, and I was like, yeah, great.
So yeah, I think it's about time I say thank you to all the people who helped me. But I want to say thank you to a couple of people who are Preet, Parker, of course, and then Otto, Zach, and then the two people who happen to contribute things, who is Helga Morsels and Clara. So thank you to both of them. And there's actually a final bonus question. Do you think it's possible to have a shot at doing this now with Ben?
Maybe you could ask them,
I'll try.
you know,
I'll
you
give it
could
a shot.
certainly give it a go.
So thank you so much.
Thanks, James. I was very glad to do it, and you did a great job of interviewing. I
Thank
think you
you.
have a bright future in whatever it is that you decide to do.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thanks, James. You too.